Hi MS Translators, welcome to another one of our video research summaries. Today talking about this paper that you can see here titled Complete Epstein-Barr Virus Seropositivity in a Large Cohort of Patients with Early Multiple Sclerosis. Now this is the paper that we mentioned on our Facebook page the other day that there was a lot of interest in, so we thought we'd provide a few more details about that study in this video. So just to summarize first what the study was about, essentially the aim of this paper was to determine what percentage of people living with multiple sclerosis have antibodies against Epstein-Barr virus. Now, Epstein-Barr virus, or EBV as it's known, is the virus that causes glandular fever. So in terms of looking at what they did in terms of this study, they had two different study groups. So they looked at 901 people with early MS, so they were looking at people at the early stage of disease, as well as then across a general cohort of people from hospitals across Germany. They had 16,163 control people, or people who don't have multiple sclerosis. And then across these people, they looked at their blood and tried to analyze whether or not they did contain these antibodies suggesting that they'd been previously infected with Epstein-Barr virus. Now, in the people living with MS, they used two different methods to analyze whether or not this infection had occurred, and a positive result from either of those methods was indicative of a previous infection, whereas in the controls they just used one method, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail when I get to the results in terms of what we can read into this. So what did they find? Well, the first result, perhaps interestingly, was that they saw in the early MS cohort, those 901 people, 100% of them, all 901, contained antibodies against Epstein-Barr virus, indicating that every single one of them had at some point been infected with EBV. When they looked at that general population, so that roughly 16,000 other people, they found that when they looked across the age range of people, as they looked at older people, the percentage that had antibodies increased, but it never got higher than 98%. And when they directly compared the population that was the age group that was most significant between the two groups, so this was people between the ages of 20 and 40, which was the most common group in the people with early MS, they found that while that was 100% in the MS group still, obviously, in the control group it was roughly about 95% of people in that age range that had been infected with Epstein-Barr virus. So I guess the question is here, what does this mean in terms of what's going on? So the Epstein-Barr virus, or EBV, story has been around for a while, but we've always sort of thought, previous data had suggested that while it was always higher in people living with MS, say 95% compared to 90% in the population, it wasn't at 100%. And so this is now one of a couple of studies that have found that it's actually 100% in people living with MS, which may indicate that tests are getting more sensitive, or that they're able to pick this up more. So what the researchers are suggesting in terms of this result, in terms of what it might mean for the MS story, is something along these lines. So if we think about it in terms of playing golf, let's say that we have a golf ball. We need a golf ball to be able to play golf, but just having that golf ball isn't enough. For example, we also need clubs. And so they're saying in the same way that this may be how Epstein-Barr virus may be related to multiple sclerosis, in the fact that it's necessary to have been infected with Epstein-Barr virus, but just having been infected with Epstein-Barr virus isn't sufficient to cause the disease. And so that's obviously why we see a lot of people in the general population as well who are infected, who don't go on to develop MS. But in terms of this current study and other studies that we've seen, a couple of other recent studies that we've also seen, it seems to indicate that you can't get MS unless you've been infected with Epstein-Barr virus. Now, are we at the stage where we can say this conclusively? Probably not. I still think that there's a couple of questions that need to be answered. Firstly, we need to see this in a number of other studies to confirm that these numbers are 100% across a lot of studies around the world. And also, I think in this study, the fact that they only used one of the two techniques in the general population means that we'd like to see what those results look like if they'd used both techniques to see whether that number did get up to 100% as well. The authors did comment on that in the study, and they suggested that they didn't believe even with that other technique it would have been enough to bridge that gap and get it up to 100%, but it would still be interesting information to have. So this does provide some more interesting information in terms of the story of how Epstein-Barr virus may be involved in multiple sclerosis, and is certainly providing some more evidence that it may definitely be playing a role. We still have a bit of a way to go, but certainly some of the other studies that are going on at the moment, like we mentioned in that Facebook post in terms of the trials that are going on at the moment, that Professor Pender is running here in Australia, will certainly be adding to that story as well. So as always, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to make on this, please do so below this video, and I'd be happy to answer them. Thanks everyone.